we can use reducer hook to manage complex state logic in function component. Let's create an enum type. Give it a name action. Let's add 3 variants to this action type. First, increase. Second, decrease. Third, reset. Let's create a structure. State. This state structure will represent a state we will use reducer hook to manage. Let's add one field, count, type s32. To use reducer hook to manage this data, we need to implement a reducible treat for this data. In this implementation block, we need to implement a associated type action. We will give it a type this enum type action. And we need to implement a reduce method. In this method, let's create a match expression. To match this action, second parameter action. Let's add our first arm, action increase. If this action matches this pattern action increase, we will return RC. Because this returning type is RC hold self, so we need to create a new instance RC and put the self instance in this new. And the counter will be the self the counter plus 1. So we will increase this counter's value by 1 and return a new instance of the state. Let's create a second arm action decrease. If this action matches this decrease pattern, we will return RC new self the count minus 1. Let's add our third arm action reset. We will return RC new self counter value. We will reset it to be 0. Let's implement a new function for this data. So we can use this new function to create a new instance of this data as the initial state in reducer. So let's create a function new. Returning type is self. Counter value, we give it a 0. In app function component, let's create a reducer. Let's give it a name counter equal to, we will call use reducer hook. The argument we want to pass this use reducer to be implement this fn1 treat. So we need to pass this state new function as argument, but without parentheses. It will create a new instance of this data structure, and this new instance will be the initial state for this reducer. Let's create a callback. Give it a name increase equal to. Let's create a new block. In this block, let's call the clone method to clone a new counter reducer. Let's create a callback from. Let's add a move keyword. So we will move the ownership of this counter to this closure. Let's add an underscore between these vertical bars. In this closure body, let's call the counter dispatch method on this counter. We will pass the action increase as argument. So when we call this dispatch method on this counter, it will call this reduce method. Let's create a second callback. Let's copy this. Let's change this name to decrease. In this dispatch method, let's change this to decrease. Let's create a third callback. Give it the name reset. Let's change this in this dispatch method to action reset. In HTML, let's create a h1 tag. In this h1 tag, let's render the status value. So counter, we will get the counter value from the state instance. Let's add a button. Let's add a onClick event to this button. OnClick equal to curly brackets increase. We'll pass this increase callback to this onClick event. And let's render the value +1. Let's copy this second button. We will change the onClick event to reset and the renders value reset. And the third onClick we will change to decrease callback and value -1. When we click this first button, it will trigger this onClick event, and this event will fire this increase callback. This increase callback will dispatch this increase variant. It will call this reduce method. It will match the first arm, so it will return a new instance of this state. Will increase this count value by 1. If we click this second button, it will trigger this onClick event, fire this reset callback, and dispatch this reset variant. Call this reduce method. It will match the third arm and set the counters value to 0. If we click a third button, it will fire the decrease callback and dispatch this decrease variant. And call this reduce method. It will match the second arm, decrease the counter value by 1. Let's go to the web browser. Here you can see the initial value is 0. If we click this +1, it will increase this value by 1 each time. If we click this -1, it will decrease this value by 1. If we click this reset value, it will become 0. This is about use reducer hook. Hope see you next time.